This founder with multiple exits, Lee Benson, is here to help you stop chasing vanity metrics. Learn the one number that matters and how to align every team to grow it.
The number one job of the founder, CEO, the top leader is to continually and responsibly increase the value of their business. Now, what does that really mean? It's crazy that we're asking everybody to create more value, more money, and we want it to feel amazing being there too. I mean, all of this is so important, but we don't show them the bullseye. So how are you supposed to do that? There is always a better way than you can think of today, and it's your job to find it.
Hello, today's guest is Lee Benson, a founder with multiple exits and the brains behind Execute to Win and Mind Management Systems. We're going to be talking about how to identify your most important number, build a culture that actually delivers results, and then why most leaders are aiming at the wrong targets. So many cool topics to hit on. Thank you for joining us, Lee.
It's good to be here, Chelsey. Thank you for having me.
Your website had an amazing section on there that said we spend $60 billion a year in leadership development, and what are the results, right? And I can list off the negative ones, but what are we doing wrong?
Well, I think the challenge is the one size fits all approach. When companies, let's say smaller companies, do leadership development, hey, everybody read this cool book, come in, let's talk about it. Yay, we had a good time, we intellectually got stimulated, et cetera. And that often, I'd say most of the time, doesn't fully connect the dots to how the leaders can create more value within the organization. And so when you do that, I think that, again, there's some value, is just not really where it should be. And I think leadership development should fully be connected to the organization that the leader works at, where they want to create more value. So how should we actually develop them in a very sort of intentional, surgical way? And there's a lot that goes into that. But as a result, I've worked with some pretty big companies, and I always ask the question, hey, what do you do for leadership development? And we have this amazing program and we get away every year for 3 or 4 days. And I said, that's wonderful. Do you have any data to track how that has impacted the leader's results? And always instantly it's no, we have nothing. We just do a survey and they said they had a good time.
Well, yeah, if I'm going to a 5-star resort, I'm going to say it was great. What got you interested in this field?
In just general leadership along
Yeah,
this?
what drove you to study it, write books about it, and start companies around it?
Yeah, I've started so far 8 companies from scratch. The first half of the 90s, I played in a rock and roll band over 1,000 nights. It's how I made most of my money back then. And I don't count that as one of my businesses, but it was like a business. You know, we changed out the rhythm section, employees a number of times. We had a manager, a sound crew, light crew. There was just so much going on. And so I learned a lot, loved it. I've always had sort of an affinity for business. It's interesting to me. And then you fast forward, start the first company, and I just start going down this road. I've had, out of 8 started, I've had 3 exits so far, one for 7 figures, one for 8, one for well into 9 figures. I'm operating 2 companies today as CEO. I love being in the game and creating value. And what I realized a long time ago is that the number one job of the founder, CEO, the leader of the company, the top leader, is to continually and responsibly increase the value of their business. Now, what does that really mean? And I've discovered that value creation, I've been doing this for decades now. To me, it's in 3 different categories. It's material value that we all get, especially, for our business. Cash flow is so important. You have to pay the bills, make payroll. But there's also emotional energy value, and there's spiritual value creation. And spiritual is about connectedness. So in all of my businesses, I kind of morphed into, well, we need some sort of financial metric that would represent the value of the business, based on all the other things going on, what's the multiple we're going to get? And then emotional energy value being created, to me, was the X factor for leaders. We create this energizing environment from which all of our team members create value. And then on the spiritual side, I really wanted to drive connections with the team members. The more we're connected with each other, the stronger the relationships, have each other's backs, the more productive everyone's going to be, the more fun we're going to have. It's going to be a much better developmental journey. We're all in this together. It's not transactional to me. It's we're together creating value in this value creation machine called this company. And the reason that the emotional energy, and I could spend a day talking about that and how I've applied it through leadership. But emotional energy and the connectedness or spiritual value creation is so important. It's around productive engagement. So when I hear engagement in companies, a lot of times to me, it just comes off like business virtue signaling. I don't even know what they mean. You did a survey and they said they're engaged. To me, every role should be designed with some type of value that's to be created. So an employee comes in, they agree to create this value. Here's how we're going to measure it. Please do this or better. Do you think you can? Absolutely. If you fall below this line, it won't work. Do you understand that? So productive engagement to me is every single team member being productively engaged in creating the value that they agreed to create when they came on to this amazing team, continually and responsibly growing the value of the business. So super long answer to your question, but it's a holistic approach that matters to me.
What's the difference to you between value creation and someone having clear, hey, these are the values I'm going to create versus the KPIs and the numbers they need to hit and activity metrics?
Yeah, this kind of goes to the concept in my book that I call the most important number in drivers. So, what's the most important number for an organization that's reflective of its value and will, drive the majority of the right behaviors to happen? So, if you have a small, mid-sized business and at any point in time you want to value this, because I think we all should have our companies in a position where they're the most value at every point in time because we don't know what could change in our life conditions. But with that, let's say it's EBITDA or revenue or cash flow or profit, however you look at it. But we look at that number, and that's the most important number for the organization because that's how it's valued. So we want to continually grow that over time. I've asked CEOs and founders, what is your job? What's your main job? And they don't have the clearest answer. But when I talk about, I think your main job is to do this, grow the business responsibly, the value of it. Yes, I'll do that. And then by proxy, the leadership team's job is to collectively do that as well. So that's the top number for the organization. And then every single department or team can have a number that's reflective of the value they were designed to create and drives the majority of the right behaviors as well. And when I talk about most important number in drivers, all of these teams intentionally designed to create value. You can see whether they're on track or not pretty quickly. And they'll measure other things, sometimes a lot of things, to help make better decisions to improve their most important number. But it's cool looking at an organization where you can see, hey, we're on track at the top. We're continually growing. Leadership's being responsible about it. Every single team in the organization has their most important number, which is usually different than the top. And it cascades all the way to the front lines, whether it's one team, 5 teams, 10 teams, 1,000 teams, it really doesn't matter. And then the driver part of it. So I'm on a team, I've got a most important number. It's reflective of whether we're winning or losing as a team. The drivers are categories of work that my team can leverage to continually increase that number, create more value over time. So when I look at a team, and I think for all of us, I love startup businesses and struggling all the way through building something that we're ready to scale. And, all of stages are just totally fun to me. But when I look at a team, I want to know, are you creating the value that we intended? And then the next thing I want to know is what's the best work you and your team are doing to increase that value, get back on track, overdrive, whatever it is. So that's how I think about numbers. And then everything else, the environment that's created, the culture that we have internally, all of that is subordinate to continually increasing the value of the business, which is good for every team member. It's job security, it's advancement opportunities. There's just so much in there for all the stakeholders.
The identifying your most important number is reminding me of the Lou Holt "What's Important Now" win. He was the football coach who was on Notre Dame and a bunch of other programs, but
Yeah.
his team was just, "What are we doing now?" And they had a way to focus their energy. Is the most important number similar where it's able to focus an entire organization, not just the leader?
Yes, an entire organization. Everything collectively sort of accretes up all the work that we're doing as a team to create value. And we know whether we're collectively doing it or not when the value of the business is consistently going up over time. And again, responsibly growing because I want to hit a number doesn't mean anything to me. I want to grow at a rate that makes sense. It's responsible. Growing a company is the best way to stay healthy as a company, but there's no arbitrary number, I think, for any business that says, I want to grow 50% or I want to be 500%, bigger means nothing. Where are we at? How can we responsibly take the next step? And every business is going to be a little bit unique. But yeah, you can see the entire organization and then every single team can see their contribution to it.
What are some common traps that a leadership team could fall into when they're defining, hey, this is our most important number?
That is such a good question. That's why when you lay it out, and the team has to come up with it because they have to own it, we can't give it to them, right? So when you come up with a number, the next question is what are the behaviors this number will drive that will help the organization? And what are the behaviors it would drive that could hurt the organization in terms of the value being created? And a great example, and a lot of small businesses don't really have a formal HR department, but as you start to grow, you can. But here's an example of a common trap. HR, when I'll start working with a mid-sized business and they'll say, oh, well, it has to be our number, has to be retention. So, okay, great. And we haven't had the behaviors discussion yet. I said, okay, you hire me hypothetically to run HR, and we're 3 years into the future, and I kept 95% of everybody. So I won on my metric.
Mhm.
Never mind that over half the team members can't do the job that they were hired to do, but I still won. So a better metric would be, in my view, percentage of seats filled with capable people. And capable means that they're actually capable of and delivering on the value they were asked to create by coming on board. And then that value, you kind of weight it as you go up because a senior leader that's in the wrong seat can cause a lot more value destruction to the organization, maybe than a frontline team member. So that's how I think about it. I could go through, the financial most important number for a CFO or a controller, but all of them kind of go through the same thing. And there's no perfect most important number, but there is one number above all others for the organization and every single team that will drive the majority of the right behaviors. And we just have to be aware of the behaviors that may not be helpful. So when it comes up, we can head it off at the pass.
This just reminded me of setting up sales compensation plans. You gotta, after you do it, think, okay, well, is how are we gonna juke the stats, or how is somebody gonna try to cheat this number so
Yeah.
that you can make sure you're doing the right plans or you're chasing the right thing?
Yeah.
Will you tell us about the MIND methodology?
Yeah, the mind methodology, which we touched on a little bit, so that's most important number and drivers. It's just a simple, elegant way to get everybody aligned in the organization to create value as one and increase it, across the board. The thing I like about the mind methodology, and I developed it to run my businesses. The biggest one went from 3 employees almost going out of business 15 times the first year. And I'm sure you've heard lots of those stories. And then fast forward 23 years, we've got about 100 million in sales. We have over 500 team members. We have 2,000 aerospace companies as customers in 60 countries around the world. And as we're going through that, I just went through all these stages of how do I get everybody aligned? How do I get leaders developed in the right way? And there's a lot of popular operating systems out there, OKRs, 40X, Scaling Up, EOS, probably a dozen pretty popular ones. And then there's thousands of others that are, that consultants have designed and many more homegrown operating systems. I wanted something that would be easy to get 500 people's heads around and they would get it really fast. And I could grow it to 5,000 and it wouldn't be an issue. And I remember the first few years and it never felt like work. And I'm sure you've heard these stories too. When you're doing it for yourself, it's amazing. But I would work 80 plus hour weeks, years on end. But fast forward, right before I sold the business, it didn't take me 15 hours a week to run this thing. And, at the time I sold it in 2016, that particular business, we'd had 15 years straight of 20% compounded annual growth on average, a little bit more than that. And we kept going. And I could see a future getting to $1 billion from there. I mean, it was just laying it out and it got easier and easier and easier. And this operating methodology works great for a brand new startup, super small company, larger, small, small, mid, all the way through. It really doesn't matter. And so that's really why I developed it, to just make it easy to align everybody. And I think that's what our employees want. They want clarity. And I'm curious, Chelsey, in your experience, how many companies are really, really clear with every team member about what they should be doing and the value that they should be creating? What's your experience?
I've never been a part of one.
Okay. Well, that's
It'll be at certain levels, so you're in the senior leadership room and everyone's, "Yeah, we got this, this is that," and then when you interview folks when I join a company, I love to interview folks at all departments, different levels. They have
yeah.
no idea what the real values are or what is your department chasing because it's not clearly communicated and over again. It's not a part of everyday life. I'm
Yeah.
waiting for that company. I'm gonna have to build it.
There you go. Yeah, and I'll also kind of go through and audit goals. So let's look at the
Mhm,
goals that everybody has, and very few of them are thoughtful and really apply. So that clarity is so important. And again, I just wanted something with the mind methodology or mind management systems, because the mind management systems is really comprehensive: culture, strategy, business model, improving the value of your stuff. Just there's so much that goes into it, and performance reviews, which I call performance snapshots. But it has to be simple and elegant and get everybody, so when they come in, they know exactly what they should be doing to create value. They can collaborate with each other better, just and see the whole organization and how they fit into it. So it's like, yeah, I really, now I get it. And they just make better decisions at all levels. So that's why I came up with it. And there's a lot of companies where CEOs will tell me, everybody's hitting their goals, but the company isn't going anywhere. And that's kind of a challenge. And employees will gain compensation if they can. Like, we set out the rules, we want them to take advantage of it, but not game it in an unethical way. But they'll also game goals so they look good. Like, you can
mhm.
change KPI to look green by just increasing, let's say, the time it takes to deliver something to a customer. If it was 30 days and you're missing it, you change your goal to 40 days, and all of a sudden you're green, but the customer's not happy at all. There's a lot of that stuff going on out there to be seen a certain way. Whereas if we're all focused on creating value together, everything is about that. And it's kind of hard to game that.
I have an example of a marketing manager who was on my team, and he kept reporting that he was bringing in, 200 leads a month. And I was like,
Sure.
"But what's happening with them?" "Oh, well, they're closing." And we were spending $8,000 on ads. This is a very small startup, and I inherited this team. 8,000 a month on ads to bring in, 200 leads, but they were all one-person businesses that were out of business. They weren't a good fit. It wasn't a good so this number that he was shouting out wasn't actually aligned to the growth goals of the company, but he was saying he was looking good because he was juking
Yeah.
the goals. So he had to change that pretty quickly to actually get his KPIs. Would you say still have KPI?
Well, 100%.
Okay.
And I just got involved with an organization a little over a year ago, and found out, probably about 6 months ago, that, wow, there's all kinds of games being played when it comes to the marketing KPIs and all that. And here are contractors and internal team members. They want to get paid and they want to keep the thing going. But once you start, pushing on it, it's like, wait a minute, there's a real problem here. And
Mhm.
that turned into just changing out the entire team. And when I look at marketing, I just think about revenue generation and all the things that have to be at the hip. And so I look at an organization and say, well, starting at awareness and every single stage, all the way to ongoing customer experience, who owns that stuff, and how do you know you're doing a good job? So if we start with awareness, so it's general branding, website, getting messaging out, marketing, and then you have marketing qualified leads. Those go to sales qualified leads. You close them. When marketing says, I got you 200 leads, I want to know, what's the definition of a qualified lead? And there has to be a closing percentage in there.
Mm.
It can't be a bunch of clicks on the website. And so I think sales, marketing, and product or service all need to be at the hip, because any improvements in any of those areas can help the other two. And so everybody in an organization, in my view, is in sales, and all should be constantly working the problem or the opportunity together.
You talked about having everybody rowing towards the bigger number, but each department maybe has their own goal.
Yeah.
How does this culture of we're all going towards this goal eliminate this finger pointing or interdepartmental kind of fighting from happening?
Yeah, when it comes down to creating value as a team, and that's the team you're on, but you're also part of this bigger team, 10 people, 20 people, biggest I've done was just over 500 that I described. And everybody's aligned to, and their compensation is aligned to winning as a team, it goes away. So I can't imagine that. I mean, I guess it could happen if you had a professional football team in the U.S. and they want to win the Super Bowl. Are they all pointing fingers at each other? Are they all trying to win the game and do their part? And I think we're setting the same thing up there. And there's a lot that goes into it. It's all this stuff is easy to say, but it's hard to do. You actually have to do the work. But I think as leaders, your job, my job is to be passionately talking about where we're going, what's possible, engaging everybody in productive conversations, actions, and decisions to go in that direction. And very importantly, we have to be clear about what's in it for them to go there with us and to actually achieve it. And I'm a fan of bonusing based on the performance of the organization. And it's such a cool way to do it. And the simplest way that I think about it is if payroll is $100,000 and in a period, a month, a quarter, whatever, and bonus is there's $10,000 in bonus, a percentage of profit that's going to go back to all the team members. They all get that 10% because it's paid out proportionate to payroll. So if you made $12 an hour or $200,000 a year, everybody got a 10% bonus, assuming that their wages are fair relative to each other.
Mhm.
But once everybody sees that and they're just all in the game, it just works. And gaming happens to me when you have all these different sales incentive programs, bonus programs, and all that. People are fighting over which department to go to, which program to get on. When you pay everybody fairly relative to the value they're creating for the organization and supply and demand in the market, I mean, all of that, you'll never get it perfect, but do a good job there the best you can. Now, when bonus drops in and everybody can see that, it is fair, and all the noise, it just completely goes away. Did that make sense, Chelsey, how I explained that?
Yeah, and it's a more enjoyable work experience from the companies I've been at that did have at least maybe not perfect, but clearer goals and clear compensation. It was much more fun when everybody was winning together.
Yeah. I'm
Much
I'm
more
actually
enjoyable.
I'm actually a fan of sharing the financials with everyone. Even
Mhm.
with 500 plus team members, every single employee in the entire organization could have a complete set of the monthly financials when we close the books if they wanted it. And for those that they don't want to be a financial expert, they're a machinist or a maintenance technician or something like that, thinking about that business, we would actually publish plain English detailed trial balances so they could say, hey, this is my department. Here's every line item of things that we bought. And when they could see it clearly in the way that they understood it, they could find all kinds of opportunities to save.
What are some reasons that leaders do hide the financials, even if the company's performing well? Why would a leader kind of keep that hidden?
Yeah. Well, usually the leader you're talking about would be the top leader, the founder, the CEO, president. And the most common reason that I hear is if people saw how much money I made, then they would want more, or they won't understand it and they'll misinterpret it and it'll cause a lot of cultural issues. I think when you go down the road and you are more transparent, it takes most of the issues away because now the stories aren't being made that have nothing to do with, or, being told, if you will, that have nothing to do with reality. And in a book I recommend everyone read, and I read it back in the 90s by Jack Stack, titled The Great Game of Business. And it's all about open book management and how challenging times would come up for the organization. Every employee they understood the financials. And then when we had to get through the challenging time, if every employee is engaged in getting through that, they can fully see the bullseye. Because
Mhm.
it's crazy that we're asking everybody to create more value, more money, and we want it to feel amazing being there too. I mean, all of this is so important, but we don't show them the bullseye. So how are you supposed to do that?
Yeah, trust us, we're getting there. It's like, okay, if we did so great, doesn't feel like we're doing so great.
Right. Yeah.
How does culture and the mind methodology directly tie to financial results in your mind?
Yeah, I think everything an organization does should be done at least with the intent of making it measurably better. So everything we do, whether it's leadership development, have a culture that's more intentional, not just, whatever is going on today by the mix of the people that we have, should be done with that in mind. When I think about culture, it's really a simple way to think about it, what we agree to do and how things get done. Another way to look at it is what are the beliefs, attitudes, behaviors that cause the most value to be created. And if you were to step back and say, well, if we look at our competitors, who are the top three strongest competitors that we have? And what are the best team members within those competitors doing on their best days to create the most value? And then you think about everybody we've worked with in the past, and if we could create the conditions where every team member, let's say 50% or more, are behaving, performing, and leading as good or better than the top 10% at our strongest, most admired competitors, they'll never have a chance again. And so
Mm.
you distill out what are the behaviors that are observable that if everybody was living that in this organization, it's just going to be hard to compete with us. We're going to have more fun. We're going to create more value. We're going to grow more opportunities, everything that goes into it. And so rather than just saying, integrity and grit and like all this other stuff that goes up and it's really nice looking, expensive wallpaper, now we could say, you know what? High performing team members throughout our organization do what they say they will. The observable part of integrity. They're fully engaged and participate within the team. They treat company resources as their own. They're respectful, honest, and straightforward. So they stay in the game when others forget that to come out the other side and create value, not just, put up a wall and walk away. So that's what we go through. And one of the things that an exercise I love to take teams through is that they have a culture and it looks good, feels good, sounds good. They've got amazing wallpaper, but they're complaining about things going on in the organization around how people are interacting with each other. And so then I ask, well, show me which one of your alignment tools, mission, vision, values, behaviors, whatever, directly address that so they're clear about what we want. And virtually every single time, the biggest issues in the organization are not addressed with their alignment tools. It's okay. Well, let's go back and rework that. And it's because when they started developing them, it was an exercise of what will sound the coolest
Uh,
instead of what do we really need as an organization? What are we trying to accomplish? And I know this sounds really easy and it should be common sense, but it's wild how many don't take that approach.
yeah. I've seen a lot of top down forcing of buzzwords or just empty integrity kind of words. And then, oh, yeah, we're good. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
How have you seen, or do you have an example of when a company transformed that was stuck or misaligned and how they transformed?
Yeah, I have a lot of examples. Small manufacturing company, started with them. I mean, a really solid small manufacturing company making about $250,000 a month in profit, which is really good. But they were stuck there for 4 years. And it took them forever to grow to the point of being stuck. And so all we did is put in the mind management systems, got everybody fully aligned. It's all about creating the most value, having everything in balance. 15 months later is 1.2 million a month in net
What?
profit. And it's like one after another like that. It's just getting it organized. It's having an intentional way of creating value. The challenge I have with a lot of the popular operating systems out there, like EOS or 40X, OKRs, et cetera, is that they force you to kind of learn a new language.
Hmm.
And in my view, they make process more important than what is most important. And what I think should be most important for all of us growing our businesses is creating more and more value. And objectively, we can measure that as a company. We're either doing it or we're not. But when you get into the other systems, are we doing it right? Did we go through the meeting the right way? Did we spend this much time here, that much time there? The format of setting a goal. I love getting all the teams around one number. Now, each individual can also have their number or a couple of numbers, but around one number that says we're winning or losing the game. And all of our efforts are going to be around that, not are we doing it right? For me, it's are we creating the value that we were designed to create or asked to create? And what's the best work we're doing to continually do that and grow it? Does that resonate, Chelsey?
Yes. When you're talking about creating value and everything, in the beginning, we talked that there's spiritual What's the third piece?
Yeah, a material, emotional, and spiritual.
That's I don't see that happening or hear about that happening in other operating systems. Is that taken into account when you're implementing this at a company? Like, "Hey, this is gonna be there are these 3 pieces?"
Yeah, here are three ways to create value. And when it comes to leadership development, the emotional energy piece is really big. For example, if you had a set of leadership traits, and let's say the first one is energy, we want leaders to have positive energy in good times and especially bad times. When things get rough, have you ever noticed leaders that just go into this space where, gosh, it just feels terrible being around them? They're acting like a victim. Well, why would we need a leader if everything was perfect all the time? We should lean into this. All the opportunity in the world, in my opinion, is in the struggle. It just is. And so lean in and actually do that. And so we're creating a productive, energizing environment again, where, from which everybody creates value. So important to infuse emotional energy and thinking about that in leadership development. And in my opinion, to me, positive emotional energy is the scarcest commodity in the world because I'd rather live only half as long on 9 or 10 from an emotional energy standpoint than twice as long on 1 or 2. It would just not be a fulfilling life. And then on the spiritual side, this isn't a spirituality play. It's not a religious play. It's a connectedness play.
Mhm.
And so I just think about growing community and at work, our team members, we're all part of this community. Do we have each other's backs? Are we supportive of each other? We're on this developmental journey together, as I mentioned earlier. That just feels better.
Mm.
So if leadership is showing up in the right way, creating this environment that I described, and we're strengthening this community. And by the way, I think drifting away from being part of a healthy community is a real problem in the world these days. I want to drift everybody back if I can. When we do all of that, you get a lot more productive engagement. And then you start actually making more money. But if it's only the money, which money's wildly important, you miss the other stuff. You lose productive engagement. You don't get the buy-in from the team members. And so you limit yourself. You don't get the creativity, the best ideas. You don't get all of it. So that's how I talk about it. When I go work with clients, I have 3 full masterminds, 1 full day each, with 6 to 8 CEOs in each of these groups where we meet monthly. And we're talking about responsibly growing their businesses and creating value in all 3 buckets. And it's pretty cool to watch watch the growth, and it feels really good. If it's only money, it doesn't feel as good. But when you're in balance between all of them, I think it's just kind of an approach to life. And the other company I'm CEO of, one is ETW, the other one is called Dinner Table. And I took this thing over 14 months ago at the request of a board. Our mission is helping parents raise kids that create value in the world. And in 14 months, when I looked this morning, 40,500 parents in our Dinner Table family community in 67 plus countries.
Wow.
So it's holistic value creation within businesses, including nonprofits, within families to intentionally get their kids ready to launch into adulthood as amazing value creating adults that we all want. And so it's so important to me to think about it this way. And it's really eye opening when I work with leaders just to see this model. And it's not all the virtue signaling leadership stuff going on out there. It's like, this is practical. You can measure it, you can feel it. And it's a fun journey. Is this resonating with you? Like you said, you don't hear much about this kind of approach from others.
I hear about it of companies trying to get everybody aligned. I haven't seen it done well, so I'm loving these stories about companies you've worked with who have implemented the MIND methodology. Let's
Yeah.
talk about this implementation phase of it for 2 different sizes. So, if you're either a startup that doesn't have department heads, you just have a few people, how do you go about implementing MIND earlier? Or as you're a larger company, maybe you've been around for 10, 15 years, people are stuck in their ways. How do you go about changing and adding this into your day to day?
Yeah.
We can start at either one of those.
Yeah, let's start with a startup.
Okay.
And we're getting ready to go. We want to do it earlier so we can build faster, and we're all fully aligned all the way through. You actually can go to our website, etw.com, and we have a sort of an on-demand DIY software platform, and you sign up for that. The first user is free. You get the entire Mind methodology course, access to all kinds of leadership tools. And every team member you add is only $12 a month. So like it's really inexpensive. I want to just get this fully out into the world. And it teaches you how to do it on your own. I recommend reading the book, Your Most Important Number, signing up for this on-demand platform. And this platform has been baked since I started building it to run my businesses back probably 2004. So there's just a ton of investment in this thing to get it to where we're at. So start there, read the book, you'll understand it, get into the platform just to take the courses and go through all of it. It's free. And then if it makes sense and you want to build your team, put them in there, and it's practically nothing to do it. So that's starting up to understand this. Now, if you're established and you want to get here, but it's not happening, we are not that aligned, a lot of silos, issues. I think most really want that. They just don't know how to do it. And so same thing, really, go to the website. You can go through the courses and all of that, get the book, Your Most Important Number. And then I always start with the senior leadership team. And usually I don't ask the question, what do you think your job is? I go, you know what, philosophically, I believe that the job of the CEO is to continually responsibly increase the value of the organization. Nobody said no yet. So, okay, great. That's wonderful. That means by proxy, the senior leadership team's job is collectively to do the same. Got it. So if we're going to increase the value of the business, how would we value the business today? What would be the multiple? How do competitors do it? All of that. So what's that based on? Revenue, profit. Great. Where are we at today? Where do we want to be in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? What, not even so much one. What do we think will happen based on doing the right work? So we lay that out. Now we're going to track that. That's our plan. So every month we can update it. Are we on track, at risk, behind, overdriving? Now we want to align every single team member in the organization. So same thing. The senior team has the valuation number, most important number for the organization, like EBITDA. And then you get into finance and HR, and it could be engineering, product, service, marketing, sales, all of that. What's their most important number? Did they go through the process to come up with the right one? And then what are the drivers or categories of work each of these teams can leverage to improve what's most important? And for you and I at the top of the organization and others listening that they're leading these organizations, I want to know quickly, are they delivering the value that we all agreed to and what we thought we would do? We're all in the game. We're doing this together. And then I want to know what's the best work that they're doing. So in the mind management system and this software platform that I'm describing, you can see it in seconds. I'm sure you remember Jack Welch, who ran General Electric. He was manager of the century. When I showed it to him in 2011, his eyes kind of glazed over. He looked at me. He said, "The transparency is scary." And he goes, "Had I had this at General Electric, the results would have been exponentially better." And I asked him, "What do you have to explain that, because you're the manager of the century. You built at the time the most valuable company in the world." And he said, "Well, for everything you heard about General Electric and their leadership development, everything that went into it, the best they could do is follow, position, and develop the top 500 leaders. Once you got past that, it was more of a check the box, and it was hard to control it." And he said with this, he personally could have followed, developed, and positioned the top 2,000 leaders. And so that's the difference. Like, can you see quickly if they're creating the value that was intended? Can you see the work they're doing? And when you look at the work they're doing, what they're talking about in meetings and actions that are being taken, decisions that are being made, I can tell in minutes whether they're just checking boxes or they're fully in the game to create value. And if they're not in the game to create value, this is wonderful news. Now I know where their heads are at so we can develop them. This is great. It's all the information is good because it's a starting place to go to the next level.
How do you know if a leader is the wrong person in the seat or they're chasing the wrong thing? They're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. Pick a leader of a function and let's just play that out for a second.
Let's say a sales manager.
Okay, so you're a sales manager, so you're going to be responsible for profitable revenue for the organization. And one of the leadership traits that's important to me is execute, the ability to deliver results. And I think a leader within an organization, what it means to be that in an organization is get results and foster an environment where every team member is intrinsically motivated and empowered to create more value over time. Great. So you're leading revenue, sales. Now, where are we at today? What's the plan between now and the end of the year and then going into next year? So we plot that out, and it has to be profitable revenue. It can't just be, do $1 million and cost $2 million to do it. So we've got that. Now I know at every point in time whether they're delivering or not on that number. Now I want to be able to look into what's happening with the team members, and are they living the cultural alignment tools? Respectful, honest, and straightforward, treat company resources as your own, fully engaged, participate within the team. When I'm looking at what's going on in there and performance snapshots and all of that, what are the team members saying? What's going on. So you're hitting the numbers, but how you hit the numbers really matters. So we want to measure culture and we want to measure leadership. And in all of my businesses, once I got past a certain number of employees, which I would say is, 10 or more to hundreds, I measured everybody objectively on performance and everybody objectively on culture and leadership in the organization. And if you were really high on hitting the numbers, performing really well there, but super low on culture, I would go out of my way to get you out of the business as fast as possible.
Wow.
And I used to tell the team members, because I would do all hands meetings every month. I still do with my companies, but 500 people I'd meet with over the course of a day, every single month. And I would tell them, I'm not kidding, if we have somebody that's hitting the numbers, but they're really low on culture, they're just a jerk to work with, I will give you a bonus if you can get them a job at our biggest competitors. And if you get them into a senior leadership position, I might give you a parking space and depending, maybe a car, because they can go suck the life force out of those companies and not do it with us. And I was serious about it. Like we would let people go that slip through the cracks.
Just like showing financials, and a lot of leaders are afraid of their top performers who are probably, like you said, a succubus, or I don't know if that's a good word to say, a vampire of positive energy. They're just
Yeah.
to be around, but they'll keep them because, they're bringing in the bacon.
Yeah. Well, if you have a strategy that says we're going to have a few high performers and they're going to drive whether we make it or we don't make it, you're really stuck. But if you have a strategy that we're going to have an intentional way of creating value as an organization, and we're going to keep getting better and better and better at how we do that, and that includes culture, leadership, alignment to all of this stuff, the net effect is always worse with this high performer that's a jerk to work with, because why? They're lowering productive engagement with the other team members. And it's terrible when the boss is favoring them and tolerating it, because your culture really will, and I'm sure you've heard this before, it's said so many different ways, but it'll sink to the level of what we tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing over the years when I've let folks go that were real jerks, how it elevated emotional energy. Like, oh, that's so great, that our boss is willing to deal with it. And I would call them metaphorical public hangings. Somebody does something that's terrible. And so when we get to our all hands meeting, I said, we don't stand for this for these reasons. That's why this person was let go. And here's how we're dealing with it. And I just want you to know, we're really serious about this. We're all here together. This is our community. We have each other's backs, creating value together. We're not going to tolerate it at all. And that wasn't hard to do. It was like, I knew it would create the most value. So I'm going to do this every single time. And it didn't happen that often, but when it happened, I would always do a metaphorical public hanging. And here's a cool stat: from 3 employees starting out that larger company to 500 when it was sold, never once did we have an employee lawsuit ever. Never had an EOC claim that went through. I think there were 5 filed, but there was nothing there. They were just trying to get something. And we didn't have a formal HR department where you could go with a grievance. I was actually the head of HR, and I set it up to where if you had an issue, you take it to your manager and you could go to the next manager and you can skip it all the way to me if you want to. Every single time, you'll never be punished for doing it at all. And I would say that 5 or 6 times over the 23 years it got all the way to me. I'm really glad it did, or it would have been an employee lawsuit. But that's a stat that I don't know another company that can actually say that. And the company that bought us, and they've done an amazing job with the business. They had such great integrity in how they handled the whole process. They put in an HR partner immediately, brought all the employees in and said, if you have any issues, you bring it to us. You don't have to talk to your manager. And I said, if you do this, I guess it's just how I talk. I said, you're going to open up the bottomless pit of emotional need. And within 2 weeks, you're going to have a case for something that never would have come up. And no kidding, 2 weeks to the day, an employee in one of the shops filed a grievance. He didn't like the way somebody looked at him.
Mm.
So they start a big case. They're interviewing everybody. It's like, oh my gosh, can we just get back to creating value here?
Yeah, instead of, go have a direct conversation with your manager or the person above and work on it instead of running over here and
Be an adult. Be an
yeah.
adult. Yeah.
And even though you brought those stats up and they're impressive, you didn't say your goal at that company was to retain as many happy employees as possible until you got 500 employees, right? And when we opened this call, you said if your goal is, I retain 95% of my employees, but they're not creating value, it's not really something you should be chasing.
Yeah, we want to keep everyone that's performing and contributing,
Mhm.
everybody. And another stat that I love is that I never once had a leader quit. I had one leader that said, if I ever can get this job with the Federal Aviation Administration as an inspector, I'm going to leave. Understood that. He came on. It was probably 4 or 5 years later. An opening came up. He got the job. Other than that, never once had a leader quit. Had to ask a few to leave because we kind of outgrew them,
Mhm.
but that's a cool stat too. And
Yeah.
then the other turnover, if turnover needed to be 20% one year because they just weren't getting done, then that's what it is. If it's 0% another year because they're all getting it done, that's what it should be. An arbitrary number doesn't mean anything. I just want to continually increase the number of folks that are delivering on the value that they agreed to per what we're keeping our end of the bargain every month, right? We're paying them 100% of what we agreed to. Why is it okay in the culture in the United States right now where employees should only have to do 30 or 40% of what they agreed to? And that should be okay. And then there's the double standard because those that think it should be okay for them not to deliver on what they agreed to, if they spend money to buy something, they want 120% of what they paid for. It's just such a weird dynamic. And I think leaders, leadership in general, we're to create an environment where they want to lean in, have fun, act like the CEO of their own roles, and go for it, which feels so much better than just skating along through life.
Well, there is what you're describing, the great companies that you work with, you take them from good to this excellent state. It's not commonplace. That's why they need companies like you. They need to read the book and understand it. What are some positives you could leave us with things that are exciting you that you're seeing out there today for the future of businesses?
I'm super optimistic, by the way, because I think you can go into any company and turn it around if
Mhm.
it's not already in a great spot. And most companies are doing well, but they can all do better. Every company can do better. So let's have fun with that. Let's not beat ourselves up at all. But I look at the United States and I say, I don't think we're creating even 10% of the value that's possible. Imagine if it was 20% or 50% or 60%. It would be just incredible out there. So that's why I'm doing all of this work with all the. I've got another book coming out here shortly on leadership, driving it into families and into for-profits, nonprofits. I've got a few government organizations reaching out, wanting to do the same stuff. They're all hungry for this. They just don't know how to do it. And so I'm super optimistic, and I'm spending this next phase of my life leaning fully into this.
It's something that we all need. We're going to link to your books, your website, and everything in the description as well so people can find it, read it, listen. You have your own podcast as well?
I do. It's titled Show Your Value. It's the art of value creation in those three macro buckets. On the website, we have the Leadership Value Lab. The theme for this month is connecting culture to creating value.
Hmm.
And so we have quite a few members in that, and it's growing. Next month, it'll be on business model. And we have a theme every single month we go through. And if you want to be part of Leadership Value Lab, you get into it, and you actually get to assess yourself in a whole bunch of these practical application leadership development categories, some of which I've talked about or we've talked about here today. Assess yourself, assess your company, and then connect that with the value that you can increase, within the business that you're working in. So there's the whole Leadership Value Lab side of it. And again, getting started with the courses on the mind management systems, it's right there, and it's literally free to just log into the platform and go for it for one person.
Well, I'm excited for that. I think I've learned that businesses that are tiny or giant businesses, there's hope. You can adjust, and there are tools out there readily available to do so. If someone who's listening to this, what would
Uh,
be a takeaway you hope that they grab and run with from this episode?
there is always a better way than you can think of today, and it's your job to find it. And at every stage for me early on, it was a dream state to hit $1 million in sales. Like, is that even possible? And then I saw 5. And then at 5, I saw 20. And then at 20, I saw 100, and I got to 100. And there's like always this next thing, but you have to lean in. And I said it earlier, all the opportunities in the struggle, stay on that front line of struggling and develop these capabilities, leadership and otherwise, to create more and more value. And then any limiting belief you have will just start stripping away. And we all have them. Everybody has them. So hopefully that helps.
It does. I'm working on mine daily. So
Okay.
I hear it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Again, we'll link to everything so you can follow and read along and listen to Lee elsewhere. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Chelsey. You as well.